Hello world, welcome back to Razor RC, doing the full review of the Team Corally Dementor V2 version. This came out in 2021. Picked it up about a month ago and have been running it, bashing it, fixing it, and wanted to share my full review of this vehicle. I do this review in a bunch of different categories, 7 different categories, giving it a rating from 1 to 5 stars. 3 stars would be average as compared to its competitors in the class. Those are going to be things like the Arrma Outcast, Arrma Notorious, Red Cat Kaiju, maybe even the eRevo 2.0. So 3 stars would be average, 5 stars would be excellent, and 1 stars would basically mean it's pretty poor in that area. Now, big shout out to Arrma RC for sponsoring this series of vehicles. Definitely check them out. We got a 5% off coupon code, so you can get a discount on this vehicle or any other RC cars out there in the space, whether you want an Arrma, Team Associated, X-Ray, whatever, or a Team Corally like this. Definitely check them out, and a good place to pick them up, especially if you're in Europe. €3 shipping. So the big question is this an Arrma copy? You know, is this just kind of a clone or a remake of all the other popular Arrma vehicles? And the quick answer is no, not at all. Engineering wise, this is a completely different vehicle. I don't think any of the parts on this thing would fit an Arrma, maybe the tires, I guess, and wheel hexes, but that's pretty much it. Actually, Killer Off-Road Hobbies has a really good review of the first version of this and showing you the differences between an Arrma and a Team Corally, but totally different vehicle. Although I will say that the marketing department, the people that came up with the names for these vehicles, the design of the bodies and stuff, obviously I do think they took inspiration from Arrma, but the engineering team, whoever came up with the designs, the manufacturing, completely different vehicle. And the first category we're going to talk about is the electronics. Radio here, the VarioProp S2R, fairly basic radio, 2.4 gigahertz, antennaless radio, so pretty standard. You got the nice little foam wheel, trigger, a little bit on the light side, but decent. A couple switches for steering reversing, throttle reversing, and dual rate. It does actually have these little electronic switches up top to adjust your trims, which is nice. And then also like a 70-30 switch here, I think, on top. It takes 4 AA's, just like your normal 2.4 gigahertz radio. Overall, fairly typical radio, nothing too special, nothing really horrible about this. Performance-wise, it's okay. I didn't find it particularly responsive, but it's pretty average for an RTR radio. Functions totally fine. Now, it does actually have endpoint adjustment, as they mentioned in the radio, but I did find that was not particularly useful. Just not enough travel for your left and right steering. So in the end, it ended up pretty much being useless, but the dual rate does work, so that is fine. Servo actually went out on me, the 7225 servo. I did tighten down that servo saver pretty much all the way, and I would not recommend that because the servo can't hold up to that. So that did break. I'm actually running an Arrma, 6S 1/8 scale servo in there now. They're older, 15M, which is working totally fine. Motor and EC are fantastic. This is the best EC by far in any RTR vehicle you can get out there on the market. Pretty much a rebranded Hobby Wing, was it like Easy Run 8, Max 8 or something like that. Excellent radio, ESC. The main reason for that is they did not neuter this. This has pretty much all the main adjustments in the ESC, so you can actually program it for drag, brake, punch, braking, even motor rotation. So super nice radio, ESC, I keep saying radio. And it's fully programmable with the Hobby Wing card. There are a few other adjustments I think they don't provide, like timing adjustment, because they don't want people to blow up their motors. But yeah, really good ESC. Motor is also excellent. The Curon 825 2050 kV motor, super awesome. I think specs wise is very similar to the Arrma motor, but this combination for whatever reason does actually seem to perform a little bit better than the Arrma versions. Really fast vehicle. I'm not sure if the gearing is higher or what, but yeah, this motor combination, ESC, fantastic. Definitely best in class. I would pick that over any other 1/8 scale electronics. So in the electronics department, I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. Motor and EC are fantastic, like I said. Servo did go out on me. I'd say it's kind of average. Radio is also kind of average, so kind of balances out with the super high rating of the motor and EC. So overall, 4 stars. The electronics are very good. Next up is the build, and overall the build was really good. I actually checked all the shocks, I checked the disc, everything was filled perfectly, no problems with how this thing was manufactured. One minor little thing was the drag link was a little bit too long, but not a big deal. Yeah, so overall build was excellent, no real issues. So overall I'm going to give it 5 stars. Came really well done out of the factory out there in China, so very happy overall. Design-wise, like I mentioned, this has nothing to do with an Arrma. I mean, it's got pillow ball suspension, but that's about it. Pretty much the whole design, completely different vehicle. Electronics layout is completely different. The arms, the shocks, the disc, everything, the steering system, completely different from an Arrma. So there is no crossover at all with Arrma. Just want to mention that overall. Very good design overall. This actually has a little bit more of a racing heritage than I think the other bashers out there. A lot more tunability. They make a lot of option parts like aluminum upgrades, even like inserts into the braces. You can get carbon fiber inserts for the arms if you want to stiffen those up. A lot of tuning adjustments. Got adjustable sway bars, adjustable shock mounting locations, different adjustments for the upper arms to get mounted into. Same with the rear camber links. Easy access discs. The design overall is very good. Adjustable servo saver, which is really nice, of course. Adjustable aluminum servo motor mount. Different Arrma positions. It does have a 70-75 Arrma bar, which is nice. Aluminum shock tires, 4mm in the front, 5mm in the rear. Fully aluminum shocks with threaded shock collars. Kind of this cool little, I don't know what we call it, kind of a locking shock cup. You kind of mount it and then give it a quarter turn and it kind of locks the shock cup in place. So overall, yeah, the design is really good. They even have some nice little touches like little steel nuts backing all of the screws. Like for example here in the front shock tire, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, there are little nuts holding the screws in place. So that way the screws aren't just threaded into plastic. They actually have little nuts. It does make it a little bit difficult to work on sometimes to hold those steel nuts in place while you're tightening down the screws, but it does definitely add some more durability. You have these little quick clips on the caster adjustment on the front arm. So yeah, a lot of nice little adjustments, even more so than an Arrma. Overall, I'm going to give the design 4 stars. Really the only downside I found was that the rear shocks are a little bit too short for something like this, you know, which is basically a stunt truck. That's what it's marketed as. That's what you're generally going to use this for. Tires are really excellent, but there's just not enough shock extension in the rear. The shocks are just a little bit too short. That's why you can see I'm actually running Creighton shocks in the rear. But yeah, overall, other than that, that's really the main downside I would say with the design. 4 stars in the design category. Performance was excellent in this truck. Like I mentioned, motor EC, super strong, really fast vehicle, tons of power on tap. You're not going to complain about the power in this vehicle. For the most part, I was running this on 4S. Did run it on 6S a couple times, but found it very difficult to control. I mean, there's just a ton of power with this short wheelbase. Tires are excellent, a lot of traction. Steers reasonably well once you tighten down that servo saver a little bit. The stock servo was totally fine. In terms of performance, really the main downside was the shocks. They're set up way too soft out of the box, even for general purpose bashing. I mean, this is not a race truck, so you generally want to run it a little bit stiffer to be able to land those big jumps. So I do think it needs stiffer springs. I do think it needs thicker oil and longer shocks in the rear, like I mentioned. So overall performance, I think, is above average. It is quite fast. It does handle well. It does feel a little bit like a race truck in sort of a basher format. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of adjustments you can make, a lot of upgrades to get the tuning exactly how you want. So that's pretty cool. So overall in performance category, I'm going to give it 4 stars. It's just let down a little bit by the landing because of the soft suspension, the short shocks, but other than that, excellent performance. Drives really well. Does a ton of backflips in the air, forward flips, triple backflips even. So you know, these tires are not only great for traction, but really excellent for rotation in the air. And then with that tunability of the ESC, again, you can set it up exactly how you want, which again does help the performance. So overall in the performance category, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Next up is the durability category, and obviously a really important category for bashers, and I just want to cover the things that I did break or bend in a month of running. So first off, I do feel like there are kind of like two main weaknesses. First off is this front brace. They did beef up these centerline bracing components in the V2 version, but I do feel like they're not quite there yet. The front brace I broke a couple of times. It seems to be a little bit too stiff, a little too brittle for me. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little more of a higher nylon content, because it does tend to crack fairly easily. Even under like normal bashing, landing things pretty well. That's kind of the main concern I have with this thing, is even if you're a pretty good driver and land it pretty cleanly, things can break like that front brace. The other area I feel is this rear dog bone. There's a quite a bit amount of flex on the rear end, even if you land it just flat, let's say 15 feet, dropping out of the sky, or landing it just on the rear wheels. The rear end kind of, the chassis kind of like temporarily, flexes a little bit, and it can smash that rear dog bone and basically rainbow it. And so that is the other issue. Now I did add some carbon fiber inserts into the rear brace here. That is a pretty cheap upgrade for this vehicle. It does seem to help, so I would definitely recommend getting that off the back. They also make an aluminum upgrade for the rear brace, which would probably also help as well. So front brace, rear brace, probably a good idea to get the aluminum pieces if you can, or at least the carbon fiber inserts for the back. But the front, I do feel like you would probably want that aluminum brace. Now I did bend some other things that did not put me out of commission, but kind of things I noticed when I took the car home after a session of bashing. I did bend the front shock tower. The ear kind of bent on this one a little bit. I just hammered it straight and mounted the shocks inward a little bit, so it's not a big problem now. But yeah, I've seen other people bend this as well, so that can be something of a weakness. And then I also did bend the Arrma plate somehow. So it's a 70-75 aluminum piece. I have no idea how I bent that, because these steering links are just plastic. They do flex, but still somehow bent that. That was also a concern. And then finally, I did break the servo. Again, I mentioned I did tighten down the servo saver all the way, so probably if you left it to the normal position, set your endpoints, it would be okay. But just something I wanted to mention. So I do not recommend tightening down that servo saver too much. Maybe just a half turn or a turn, but I did want to mention that because I have heard of other people breaking the 7225 variable prop servo. So in the durability category, I do feel like it's a little bit below average in terms of durability. You will want to get some upgrades like the aluminum center braces. After that, I think it's still got a few not weaknesses, but you do have to be a pretty decent driver. If you're like landing this completely wrong all the time, landing on the roof, landing on the front end, whatever, not able to land this thing cleanly, I do think you will run into a few more problems than your average basher. So in the durability category, I'm gonna give it 2 stars, a little bit below average. I do think the Arrma is probably a little more durable. This is kind of closer, probably like an Arrma V3 or something like that, where it was good and it was obviously much improved over the V1 and V2 versions, but still could use a little bit of improvement. So in the durability category, 2 stars. Nice things to see, none of the arms broke, chassis did not break. I did pull the pillow balls through the steering knuckle once, but once I remounted it, that was not an issue, and that happens on pretty much all these pillow ball vehicles, so not a concern there. But yeah, just a couple of things down with the center bracing that I do think need to be improved. Team Corally is a bit of a smaller brand. They've been around a long time over there in Belgium, in Europe, building on-road cars and some off-road racing vehicles, but they've kind of taken a shot now at the basher RTR class, and it's really cool to see another competitor out there taking on Arrma and Traxxas and all the other big bashing brands. And I think they do have a really good vehicle, but unfortunately, because they are a little bit smaller brand, especially here in the United States, not a lot of hobby stores, not a lot of people carry spare parts for this, so a little bit more difficult to get parts. Maintenance wise on this vehicle, fairly easy to work on. I did mention it does have those steel nuts that kind of reinforce some of the screws, so those can be a little bit difficult to work with. Sometimes they're set into the plastic and they can spin within the plastic, or sometimes like this front bumper here on the bottom, there's nothing holding it in place. It can be a little bit tricky to tighten that down. The other cool thing is they do actually have a lot of upgrades from the factory. They have these really nice Trick 7075 aluminum upgrades, like for the shock towers, for the bracing. They got carbon fiber inserts for the arms if you want to add stiffness, carbon fiber inserts for the bracing. They even make a full-on 7075 aluminum chassis. So if you find this chassis is not durable enough for you, you can get that. I did not have issues with the chassis. Mine is totally straight, so not a big concern there. They make different springs, they make different sway bars, so a lot of tunability in this vehicle. Like I mentioned, Team Corally is really more of a race vehicle, so it is nice to see that they do provide a lot of sort of upgrades and tuning parts for this thing. But on the support side, it is more difficult to get spare parts for this. Just not as many stores are going to carry this. Your RC does carry all the replacement parts, so definitely check them out. You can get parts there, but at least here in the United States, it is not as popular as some of the other major brands. So in the support and maintenance category, I'm going to give them actually a below average score. I'm going to give them 2 stars out of 5. Just a little bit more difficult to get parts. But you know, not bad. They obviously do carry everything that you would need, and you are able to find parts, just maybe not at your local hobby shop. The Dementor retails for $550 here in the United States. That is fairly in line with the other major brands out there. You know, when this thing first got released, I thought they were trying to make kind of a cheaper version of Arrma, and while this is slightly cheaper than the Arrmas at $550 as opposed to $570. It's really pretty much the same price if you look at things. However, I do think it is a good value. The quality of the vehicle is pretty high. You know, I would say in some areas actually higher than Arrma. Arrmas tend to have like kind of unfinished plastics a bit. Like I always feel like the Arrmas are trying to hurt you somehow just working on them. They got like sharp edges on all the metal pieces, sharp edges on the plastic. So Arrmas quality wise, I feel like they feel a little bit of a level down. The quality on this is really high, really good. So that is excellent there. But obviously not a cheap vehicle. This is not like a cheap clone of an Arrma. This is in many ways, I think, a better and more race-oriented vehicle, and kind of a higher quality vehicle as well. I mean, the ECU motor are definitely better pieces than the Arrma counterparts, but price-wise, it's pretty much fair. The Kaiju is cheaper by about $150. Something like eRevo 2.0 is going to be a little bit more expensive. Arrma is about the same price. So I think in the value category, it's average. It's 3 stars. Nothing really special. Nothing really bad or good either, but kind of average. So what's the conclusion on the Team Corally Dementor V2 2021 edition? First off, I did want to say that the color scheme on the body looks way better than the V1 version. So I do recommend getting some little white stickers for the headlights to make it look a little bit better, because it does look kind of weird out of the box, on that front grille, on that front headlight section. So styling wise, which I never really rate, it is a big improvement, but the vehicle in general, it is not an Arrma. It's not meant to be an Arrma. The engineering is completely different. I think in ways it's better than the Arrma. The performance I think is a little bit better. The build was really good. The design is really good. A lot more tunability, a lot more option parts to kind of stiffen up the vehicle if you like. Performance is just awesome. Motor, speed, power, tires, traction, handling is really good out of the box. It was built a little bit better than most Arrmas. The discs, shocks, everything were filled correctly, built correctly, no issues there. So nice to see that the build quality is there as well. But I do feel like it's a little bit short of the Arrmas in terms of durability. So I do feel like the bracing system, you do need to pick up the aluminum pieces. And the rear shocks, you probably want to find some longer shocks. Definitely at least get some stiffer springs. I'm running Creighton springs on mine. That does help the suspension quite a bit. So suspension tuning is not quite there, and durability not quite there, but the other categories, design, performance, and electronics, the build, are all excellent. So in some ways better than Arrma, some ways worse. Kind of depends what you're looking for. I do feel like this is a little bit more of a driver's vehicle than the Arrmas. The Arrmas are excellent as well. They do have a bit of a racing background coming from Team Durango, and Team Corally is the same way. They do have a bit of a racing background, and they did build something that is fun to drive, works really well. So a good vehicle overall. So final thoughts, I do feel like they need to improve some things in durability, but performance in every other category is really good. And I'm glad to see Team Corally come out with something to take on Traxxas, Arrma, Losi, pretty much take on the big boys and compete at that level or above, actually. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the Team Corally Dementor. Definitely check out your RC. We got that 5% off coupon code if you want to pick up this or anything else. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely look for more videos soon. Take care. Thanks for watching.